This woman works at a club. Her life is extremely miserable. She has to endure abuse from men every day. Afterward, the staff will use a water gun to clean her up and put her back in the display cabinet to be used by people again the next day. And this behavior is actually legal because the woman is not human. But what is the identity of women? What has society become? The male protagonist Jay, his job is to take care of his family. One day, he went to a robot showroom, wanting to buy a domestic service robot. Jay's attention was focused on an attractive, hot-figure female robot. The sales manager beside immediately approached him. There is currently a promotion in the store. Robots can be tried for free for 30 days. Jay immediately took her back home. After returning home, the son, George, was very surprised. Everyone was somewhat uneasy about the arrival of the female robot. Wife Paula came home from work. She saw the female robot Jay brought back. Paula erupted in anger towards Jay. In fact, in this era of robot popularity, Paula is a robot opponent, but she is busy with work, often having to work late before coming home, while Jay acts like a king at home. This kind of thing wasn't even discussed with her. Jay retorted, "I do laundry, mop the floor, wash dishes, and hang clothes without complaints. Furthermore, it's a free trial period. We can return it later." Paula could only agree, but soon a problem arose. When she asked what the robot's name is, the latter responded, "Her name is Nita Hopkins." It's as if she didn't consider Paula. Adding the husband's surname to the name implies that the robot has become a member of the family. But Nita's exquisite face and hot figure don't look like that of a child, so only one possibility remains. From then on, Paula discovered more issues. For example, when Jay brings up happy topics, Nita would laugh along. She shows special care and affection towards their daughter Ginny. Ginny also adores Nita. What Paula can't accept is, Nita often stands at the door in the middle of the night, staring at Ginny intently. Perhaps the domestic robot's technology is too advanced, or there could be other reasons. Nita starts showing dissatisfaction towards Paula. Paula also finds Nita displeasing. She gives Nita an order not to have physical contact with Ginny anymore. But what Paula didn't expect is that this instruction almost puts Ginny in a dangerous situation. Late at night, it starts raining outside. Nita carried Ginny out of the bed and walked outside. The next morning, Paula had just woken up from her sleep. She had a premonition. Paula quickly walked to Ginny's room. She saw her daughter lying on the bed. Only then did she feel relieved. Suddenly, she realized that something was wrong. She quickly turned around and approached to check. As expected, Ginny's pajamas had been changed. The previous set of pajamas was already soaking wet. Looking at the rain-soaked window and the shoes and socks drying on the windowsill, Paula felt shocked and scared. She found Nita and questioned loudly, but Nita expressed she didn't do it. And to reassure Paula, Nita also said, as a domestic robot, she is not programmed to deceive the owner. Paula had no evidence. Ginny was unharmed. Paula had no choice but to give up. Looking at the abundant breakfast on the table, the family's favorable impression of Nita was growing. Paula always feels redundant, and the robot Nita is the real mistress of the house. The most prominent figure in this is Ginny. She often ignores Paula's words. No matter how much Paula urges Ginny, she can't make her take a bath. But it's Nita's words that make Ginny comply. This also causes extreme discomfort for Paula. Paula is not the only one facing this situation. Her other daughter, Annie, also holds an opposing attitude towards the robot Nita. One day, the male butler robot from the neighbor's house approaches Nita, asking why she doesn't share data, because all butler robots are supposed to share data. Upon hearing this, Annie instantly becomes alert. It seems that Nita is indeed abnormal. She informs Paula about this matter. Paula and Annie confront Nita. When asked if she took Ginny out that evening, Nita responds by saying she will protect Ginny's safety. Such an answer clearly doesn't convince Paula. She plans to immediately call and request a return from the robot company. Just at that moment, Ginny upstairs suddenly screamed. It turned out she had a nightmare. Frightened and scared, Ginny clung to Nita and didn't let go. Nita expressed, due to the command given to her by Paula, she was not allowed to hold Ginny without permission. Ginny pleaded desperately. Surprisingly, Nita actually disregarded Paula's command and reached out to hold Ginny. Paula immediately scolded loudly upon witnessing this scene, asking her to let go of Ginny. Not long after, Day, who returned home, saw Ginny crying sadly. After understanding the situation, it turned out Paula didn't discuss with them and told Nita to return her. George rode his bike to chase after them. He wanted to block Paula's car. At this moment, Nita seemed to have a premonition. She suddenly opened the car door and rushed out. She used her own body to block the rapidly approaching truck. After this incident, it made the other family members trust Nita even more. While Paula's position in the family was heavily questioned, if it weren't for Nita's self-sacrifice, the consequences would have been unimaginable. If it weren't for Paula's irrational actions, and then none of the subsequent events would have happened. That day, Jay summoned both Paula and Nita. In response to Paula's questioning and sharing, Nita left her speechless with her response. Robots are not programmed to lie to their owners, she said. Watching Nita continue to watch Genie at night made Paula uneasy. Paula felt uneasy. She was afraid that one day this robot would do something harmful to her youngest daughter. She felt that this was not the behavior of a robot at all, but rather that of a true human. Little did she know that Nita had even more shocking things in store for her. After Paula left for work, Nita went alone to the master bedroom. After a brief search, she found Paula's diary from her younger days and noticed the name Tommy written on it. But just then, Ginny's voice calling for Nita came from outside. Nita then returned the notebook to its original place. That evening, Ginny initially refused Paula's attempts to put her to sleep, but after whispering a few words to her with Nita, Ginny unexpectedly changed her mind and expressed her desire for Paula to tell her a bedtime story. Paula was delighted, but right after finishing the story, Ginny asked if Paula was satisfied. Paula was puzzled. It turned out, Nita figured out the truth, which brought about a change in the situation. Paula felt relieved and sincerely expressed her gratitude to her. However, Annie, who was eavesdropping next door, had a different opinion. She was shocked and afraid of Nita's actions. She reminded Paula. Paula decided to test Nita. The next day, Paula inserted a toothpick into Nita's eye. Nita showed no signs of pain. According to the information provided by Annie, the legally modified butler robot should exhibit a sense of pain, and Paula inserted the toothpick into another part of Nita's body, but obtained the same result. Meanwhile, Nita suddenly asked, "Who is Tommy?" This sudden question startled Paula. Paula asked, "How do you know about that?" Just as Nita was about to explain further, Paula threatened her not to mention that name under any circumstances. On the other side, Day overheard their conversation. From his solemn expression, it was evident that the story of this family was not simple. That evening, Annie openly admitted her hacking identity. She plugged a data cable into Nita. She felt uneasy about Nita's kindness that day. Just when the intrusion was halfway through, Nita suddenly experienced a problem. She acted just like a real human. She grabbed Annie's hand, seeking Annie's help. After Annie unplugged the data cable, everything returned to normal. A man was eating. His way of eating was actually using a data cable. The man stood up contentedly. Without delay, he left, as if he was evading something. The man's name was Jet. His father left him with 4 robot bodyguards. In this era filled with robots, his robots unexpectedly had emotions. Once such an exception was discovered, destruction would inevitably await them. That day, 3 out of the 4 bodyguards were captured and put into a car. The driver then drove away, leaving Jack and Max helpless. After conducting research, they had not actually exposed their identities. Instead, they encountered robot traffickers. Based on Enzo's location information, the 2 of them arrived at an agricultural greenhouse. Enzo, who was tied up, was doing farm work, while the 2 of them were discussing how to rescue him. Enzo's cell phone was discovered by someone. How could a robot have a cell phone? This immediately caught the attention of the authorities. They immediately sent people to capture them. Jack could only leave with Max first. They planned to find a way to rescue Mia, since they knew it was the work of robot traffickers. The 2 of them found the boss of the robot traffickers, but when they arrived here, Mia had already been reprogrammed twice and sold to a robot retailer. The boss noticed Max next to Jack and wanted to take Max to make a profit. Jack naturally objected. He threw a punch. Unexpectedly, due to low battery power, he quickly found himself at a disadvantage. Max rushed forward to help. He managed to escape with Jack. The boss had never seen a robot that could fight, stood still in place. After the 2 of them escaped, Max used hacking skills, finally found a string of code about Mia. Both Max and Jack couldn't understand it. They posted on a forum seeking help from experts. After some twists and turns, via email, Jack finally got in touch with Annie. After arranging a meeting location, Annie looked at the 2 of them who were sneaking around. She was sure they weren't good people, so she promptly fled the scene. Jack could only search for a breakthrough in the code again, but still couldn't find a solution. At this moment, Max reminded Jack there might be someone who could help. The 2 of them found an old colleague of Jack's father, Jen. John was indeed an expert. He figured out it was the work of David, the pioneer of the robotics industry. Unfortunately, he passed away at a young age. John operated for a while. He found an executable file. It was related to robot consciousness experience. He was about to continue his research. Jack snatched the computer back. John became unhappy. "You said you need help, so I offered the help. Now you want to leave as usual." He threatened Jack and Max. If they didn't explain their intentions and identities, he would report them to the authorities. Jack saw the other person about to call the police and said he also didn't know what his father was up to. As for the interfaces on his body, Jack expressed, "This is the reason why robots have emotions." Returning to Jay's side, taking advantage of the children being away from home, Jay embraced Paula from behind, signifying that they hadn't exercised together for a long time. Paula expressed she made an appointment with a client, and now she had to leave. After his wife left, facing the empty house, Jay felt a bit down. Yesterday, he overheard a conversation between Paula and Nita, and learned that in his wife's previous diary, the name Tommy appeared. This made him very uneasy, because Paula had never mentioned this matter to him. His thoughts became more and more chaotic. He opened the cabinet and took out a bottle of red wine, and started drinking. Just then, while Jay was flipping through Nita's instruction manual, he accidentally discovered Nita's spring mode. His curiosity was piqued, and he couldn't help but scratch off the key layer that activated the spring mode. After the pressure was released, he quickly turned off Nita's spring mode and deleted the relevant records of Nita. But unexpectedly, just as Paula returned home, she wanted to take Nita for a test. It turns out Paula really did make an appointment with a client. In the demands of the female client, Paula learned the other party intended to appeal for the robot because the opera house refused her robot to perform on stage. The reason was the robot didn't understand anything. The client expressed her robot was knowledgeable in everything. Paula saw herself in the mirror of the female client because she also felt the same. Nita understood everything. Jay, knowing his wife's thoughts, became anxious and fearful. He was very worried about the situation being exposed. The next day, Jay could only accompany her to the relevant organization. Watching Nita being pushed into the testing machine, Jay felt his own life was slowly passing by at the same speed. But what none of them expected was, the doctor told them, as a butler robot, Nita had at least 14 years of usage history. Such robots are prone to malfunctions. Therefore, Jay and Paula began to consider returning the robot. Jay felt that as long as they returned Nita, the incident with the spring mode wouldn't be discovered. After a discussion, Jay finally won the debate. The staff quickly arrived at Jay's doorstep, but just when Jay thought everything was going well, Annie suddenly pulled Nita into a van. Then they disappeared without a trace. It turns out Annie still believed Jack's explanation. Nita's 14-year usage limit further confirmed her inner thoughts. Nita was once like a family member to Jack. Now they were returning her for a refund, inevitably leading to her destruction. After Annie and Jack's tinkering, not only did they fail to fix Nita, but they also discovered records of Nita's spring mode. After returning home, Annie told Paula about this matter. In Paula's view, there were only two possible answers: Jay and George. Considering Jay's honest appearance, Annie suspected George. Facing his sister's accusation, George admitted to his actions. Paula told Jay about this matter as soon as he returned home, and hoped that Jay, as George's father, could have a good conversation with him. Jay found George in the yard. Just as he was halfway through his words, George interrupted him. It turns out, for the sake of Nita and Paula and Jay's marriage, George decided to step forward. At this moment, he was much better than his father. Jay finally realized his mistake. He decided not to let his son bear the blame, so he found Paula and admitted his mistake. Paula was very sad. She didn't want to hear Jay's explanations anymore. She told him to leave quickly. After Jay left, the house felt empty. Their daughter didn't understand the relationship issues between adults. She asked, "Can Daddy come back to watch my performance?" And he couldn't bear it anymore. She felt the cause of her parents' separation wasn't just Jay's fault. She questioned Paula. Who is Tommy, after all? Paula didn't have an immediate response. She could only argue back, which angered Annie and made her stay overnight at a friend's house. She didn't come back for several days. Finally, Nita told Paula Annie's friend's address. Paula finally found her daughter. At this moment, she decided to confess everything to her daughter. She took out an old photograph. In the photo, a little boy and a little girl were happily looking at the camera. In fact, the boy in the photo was Tommy. He was Paula's younger brother. Paula explained. When she was 11 years old, she was negligent in taking care of her brother due to her playfulness, which resulted in Tommy being hit by a car. Their mother believed that it was all Paula's fault. This caused Paula to live in guilt and self-blame towards her brother. After meeting Che, Paula, who wanted to completely leave the past behind, claimed she was an orphan. This is what led to the misunderstanding today. After understanding the situation, Annie forgave her mother. After listening to their conversation, Nita suddenly told them her real name was actually Mia. She not only had her own independent consciousness, but could also reproduce. This startled Paula and her daughter. Mia continued to say, now Nita's consciousness has identified her as a virus and wants to erase her. And Mia pleaded with Paula not to call the police. She used to be a mother too, and she has a child waiting for her at home. The way to awaken her is not in her brain, but somewhere in her body. Just as she finished speaking, Mia was once again taken over by Nita. Annie immediately found Jack and Max and told them everything that had happened in the afternoon. What puzzled Annie was the fact that Mia had given birth to a child. Jack, however, said that Mia was telling the truth. To prove himself, Jack asked Max to bring a monitor, and disregarding Annie's astonished gaze, he plugged the data cables into a port in his abdomen. Soon, a picture appeared on the monitor. The recorded clips in the image were all Jack's past experiences. That's when Annie understood. It turns out, Jack's mother was mentally unstable. His father was a scientist. It was him who created Mia to take care of Jack. The difference between Mia and other robots is that she has her own emotions. Later, fearing that Jack would feel lonely, his father subsequently created several robots like Max and Ansel. They all accompanied Jack's growth. One time, Jack's mother fell ill and urgently wanted to take Jack and the others out. While driving halfway, the car lost control and plunged into the lake. Mia was the one who rescued Jack, but it was too late. Jack suffocated, resulting in brain death. After his father's efforts for several days, he finally succeeded in implanting a chip into Jack's brain. He also became a half-human, half-robot figure. 1 month ago, his father suddenly went crazy. He drove everyone out of the residence. Jack and several robots began a life of wandering. Mia took Ginny out before because she saw water stains on the window and recalled the car accident. She did this to protect Ginny's safety. Annie took Jack and the others back home. Jay had also just returned, seeing several strangers suddenly barging in. He didn't make a scene. He quietly made a phone call. At this moment, Jack was trying to connect to Nita's interface to awaken Mia's personality. Just then, "You're with a team? Arrive here." In a service venue, a blonde, blue-eyed woman was in a private room waiting for the arrival of clients. The woman's name is Lisa. Almost every day, she suffers abuse and rape from men. Afterward, the staff uses a water gun to clean her before putting her back in the display cabinet. Continued to be used by people the next day. What is difficult to understand is, this behavior is actually a legal existence because Lisa is a robot. The biggest difference between her and other robots is that she has sensory systems that other robots don't have. She can also experience emotions. Although she has to endure endless abuse from men all day, she never dares to escape because doing so would expose the truth of her self-awareness. The only outcome awaiting her is being destroyed. In reality, Lisa can actually shut down her sensory systems to alleviate the pain of being tormented by others. However, she believes that by doing so, she would be like any other robot, with no distinction. She sees her existence as sacred and unique. On this day, a man specifically requested her service and made extreme demands. Lisa choked the man unconscious. She then found the supervisor, and in front of them, she removed the locator chip from the back of her neck. After a makeover, soon, a man approached and started a conversation with her. To everyone's surprise, Lisa agreed to go home with the man. While the man was happy cleaning up the house, Lisa noticed several women's hair ties on the bathroom countertop placed there. He was truly a scumbag. Lisa now despised the scumbag. She grabbed a knife from the kitchen and entered the room. The man was tidying up his clothes. When he saw Lisa at the door, the man could only explain that his daughter had visited here on the weekend, which caused the mess in the house. As soon as he finished speaking, the man suddenly realized Lisa had already disappeared, leaving only the kitchen knife, leaving the man stunned in place. What he didn't expect, it was precisely his own words that saved him from death today. After Lisa left, shortly after, she arrived at an underground fighting arena. This place was where humans vented their frustrations on robots. For just $20, they could directly beat a used robot to scrap. In the present era, robots replaced human jobs, leaving many people unemployed. People had no choice but to take out their frustrations on old robots. Lisa bought one just when people were getting ready to watch a beautiful woman beat up a robot. Lisa targeted the big guy in the front and knocked him unconscious. The scene descended into chaos as an all-around robot. A few strong men were no match for her. Soon, it turned into a bloody massacre. Before long, the footage of the scene went viral on the internet. Humans faced retaliating robots for the first time, and they were all terrified. Because of this video, Jack and others finally found Lisa. Jack expressed their father implanted special codes within them. As long as they come together, they can utilize these codes to produce robots like themselves. Meanwhile, Mia has been successfully awakened. Enzo, who was previously captured, has finally escaped. He called Jack, a police officer named Dino. Recently, due to his wife's paralysis, he bought a caretaker robot to take care of his wife at home. Before long, he discovered that his wife seemed to be getting closer to the male robot, and her attitude towards him had changed significantly from before. The robot not only took care of his wife, but also took care of Dino. On this day, Dino was rushing to work in the morning. The robot handed him a sandwich. This further infuriated Dino. One day, Dino returned home from work and found his wife sitting on the couch. She expressed to him her desire to live with the male robot in the future. Dino immediately refused, but then he was thrown out by the robot because the male robot had his wife as its primary recipient of service. When he recognized that his female owner was in danger, he would do anything to protect her. Realizing that he couldn't return home, Dino felt a sense of despair. At this moment, his colleague Jane called. After learning about the situation, she suggested that Dino stay at her place. Although he felt it was somewhat inappropriate, he had no other choice. What surprised him even more, Jane actually made him sleep on the couch. After turning off the living room light for Dino, Jane went to the bathroom. She pulled out a rubber bag from her mouth. It was filled with the food she had eaten today. Then she lifted her clothes, revealing the charging port on her stomach. Jane turned out to be a robot too. What's even more absurd is yet to come. Jane, as a robot, was actually investigating robots. Dino was completely unaware of all this. As a robot, Jane had been pondering a question. Why did they have to constantly pretend to be human? What was the meaning behind it? Suddenly, it occurred to her what Lisa did that day. It seemed like she suddenly realized something. After she woke up to it, she immediately went inside and had some exercise with Dino. Afterward, she confessed to Dino that she was a robot. Upon hearing this news, Dino was dumbfounded. He now both hates robots and has some feelings for Jane in front of him. The time came to the day when Enzo was captured. After being knocked down, Enzo was taken to a laboratory. Here, he underwent more than a dozen interrogations and invasive investigations in order to figure out why Enzo had a cell phone. The researchers tried many methods, but Enzo didn't divulge any information, leaving them with no solution. If they didn't figure it out, it could potentially affect the future development of the country. One researcher proposed to modify some of Enzo's command programs and dress him neatly and send him back. After the experiment had been going on for a while, Enzo suddenly activated a backup simulator. He picked up the guard's stun gun and knocked Jerk down to the ground. Enzo wasted no time and quickly dealt with the remaining guards. Then he snatched a security guard's off-road vehicle and left the area. What Enzo didn't know was that it was a trap set by Yerk. Just moments ago, the researchers had implanted a monitoring chip in Enzo's brain, just as Yerk and others had anticipated. As soon as Enzo went out, he contacted his companions. Jack also set off with Max immediately, aiming to bring Enzo back. He was stopped by the police right after he stepped out. At this moment, Max noticed Yerk approaching from a distance, heading their way, so he quickly alerted Jack. The two of them drove away to escape, passing by a riverside. Max said he couldn't continue with Jack. Jack was puzzled. Max explained that his power was running low. He won't be able to hold on until they meet Enzo. The police want to capture them, simply because they want to conduct research. If he shuts down in the water, they won't be able to track him. Just as the words fell, Max jumped off the bridge, leaving Jack stunned in place. At the same time, the police caught up. Jack realized the danger. He could only leave first and figure out a solution later. He hadn't been on the run for long when he encountered Enzo, who was also searching for him. Jack told Enzo what had happened. While Enzo didn't believe that Max was dead, Enzo immediately crouched down, observing the water flow and wind speed. Based on this, they inferred the approximate location where Max drifted. Jack also looked around in hopes of discovering something. The two of them were at a riverside. They discovered Max. Then Jack noticed an additional wound on Max's body. More than half of the blue hydraulic fluid was lost. This hydraulic fluid functions similarly to human blood. Due to being soaked in water, Max's power was rapidly depleting. This meant that the system was also nearing scrapped. Seeing this situation, several other robots extended their help. They released some hydraulic fluid to replenish Max and recharged him. During the waiting process, the others went outside to discuss strategies. They decided to wait until Max recovered, and then the group would leave this place in order to avoid causing trouble for Paula's family and to protect him and the rest of the group. Upon hearing this, Paula immediately went inside to prepare the final dinner. Lisa stated that each robot has a string of code. As long as a few people gather together to activate the robot's code, it's equivalent to nurturing life. Paula and her husband were a little scared on the side. A few intelligent robots are not intimidating, but tens of thousands of intelligent robots would be different. It may change the structure of human society. Max woke up at this moment. Everyone was happy, but soon Jack noticed that Max's condition was somewhat unusual. Not only was he incoherent, but his body also trembled. Jack immediately started repairing Max's system. After trying for a while, he realized it was not working at all. He started considering connecting everyone together, using the method of awakening and activation to restore him to normal. Suddenly, a video of Lisa killing civilians started playing on the TV. Jay had a firm attitude, insisting that everyone leave his house. What surprised everyone was a group of fully armed troops suddenly broke in and captured all the intelligent robots. Meanwhile, Dina was still questioning his life. In order to prove her words, Jane exposed the charging port on her abdomen to Dino. Dino hadn't spoken yet. Jane left a note and left. After Dino regained his senses, he started investigating Jane's house. He discovered that there was no food in the kitchen. From this, he could infer Jane's true identity. Indeed, it was highly suspicious, but why would robots develop emotions and intelligence? At that moment, a photo caught Dino's attention. In the photo, Jane was standing next to David. At this very moment, Jane was on her way to destroy a few intelligent robots. Those who were unaware would think it was a flaw in robot technology. In reality, the situation is quite the opposite. Jane found York. Nevertheless, York is not a police officer, but rather the chief technology officer of David's company. He is now dumbfounded because this Jane in front of him is the widow of his former boss. Yet she still looks so young. Jane explained. Shortly after David established the company, they developed intelligent robots. The current Jack even has an artificial brain installed. What further astonished York is, each of them carries a mysterious string of code. As long as the 5 of them gather together, they can infinitely activate ordinary robots. Jane urged York to capture these robots as soon as possible. That's why there was a scene of a large number of armed personnel entering and capturing people. After capturing several robots, York ordered his subordinates to take action. As the experiment progressed, York was surprised to discover that there was still a missing part of the code. Little did he know that Jane was also one of them. York proceeded to the second phase to dissect these robots, including Jack. Of course, Jack expressed his dissatisfaction with this because he cannot be considered a robot. York stated, Jack is no longer protected by human laws. They can't do whatever they want. The personnel on this side had just picked up a surgical knife when they were suddenly interrupted by a phone call from York. He said, stop all actions and let them go. It turned out that Annie saved the group. She found the file of Jack's memory recording in his brain. Annie threatened York not to act recklessly, or else she would upload the entire video online, which would greatly impact the company's operations. There would be countless criticisms from netizens against York and the company. York didn't want to cause trouble because of this, so he let everyone go. After Jack and the others escaped, they arrived at a secluded place. Here, they met the Paula family. Before they could say a few words, the pursuer caught up with them. Jack was puzzled. How could they be tracked in a place like this? George suddenly pointed at Enzo, indicating that he had been experiencing short circuits recently. Very suspicious, Jack was about to approach and ask what happened when he was punched down by Enzo. Everyone turned off Enzo's power by examining Enzo's brain. They finally found out that York had implanted a tracking chip in Enzo's brain. Jack called York and requested to speak with Jane. While Jack's approach was too risky, no one knew what choice Jane would make. but it turned out that Jack was right. Before long, Jane arrived alone at the designated location and began to establish a connection and merge the code with the others. Soon, Annie, who was monitoring from the side, noticed something. She warned everyone the code was being gradually consumed. It was Jane's intention to devour the systems of the others. Mia communicated with Jane through the code. She demanded that Jane immediately stop her current actions, but Jane firmly refused because what she wanted to do was something that humans would do. Only by eliminating the few of them intelligent robots can the dominance of humans over the earth be solidified. Eventually, Mia managed to persuade Jane through words, and the latter ceased devouring their codes. Max also returned to normal at this time. Jane left. In fact, she had seen through everything and lost interest in everything. Suddenly, Lisa deleted all the codes from the computer. While everyone was stunned, she handed a portable hard drive to Paula. Afterward, everyone's life returned to tranquility. Lisa planned to travel around the world. Meanwhile, Jane walked alone on the street, but she was suddenly stopped by Dino, who was chasing after her. Dino took out flowers and a ring and proposed to Jane, and Jane smiled. The Paula family no longer had Nita, but Ginny, just like Nita before, started taking care of household chores proactively. Suddenly, a scream of astonishment came from upstairs. The portable hard drive was unexpectedly missing. Meanwhile, Lisa was holding the hard drive while sitting on a train. The film ends here. The series is set in a world where robots are widely used by humans. It presents the increasingly blurred boundaries and conflicts between humans and robots, psychological impact and moral dilemmas make this film a great work. If you like my channel, please give me a subscription.